Hi everyone, my name is Arzish. As you've heard before, I'm running this event and a couple of other things. First of all, sorry for the slight delay, but we really appreciate the support from all our speakers. I really wanted to come in and moderate this discussion myself because ride hailing is close to my heart. Other than all the other stunts I've done in my life, I had a small time at airlift, right? Where very few people know about this. I spent like 7 days, and after 7 days, I was like, it's not as much fun as hosting events, maybe. But that was an experience, and seeing the journey of airlift and then swivel. And Maha, you've been a GM for Swivel Karachi, and you have this amazing background in ride hailing, and now you started this new company which is Buscaro, right, which wants to reshape the space. You've raised around, so congrats for that. We have Asim, Jamil, who works in this space in Saudi, and he's also part of the Saudi participation in Pakistan. Musstanser is here, a very old friend. I would say you have now working in the global ride hailing space, and then Adeniyi, my very old friend, who represents Yango, which is one of the I would say profitable, the only profitable ride-hailing company in the world. And we hosted them recently, and now he's back, and it's always a pleasure. I think I will just start with quick questions. So, Maha, let's start with you. What's up with Buscaro? What happened with Swivel? What is new with this thing? We're super excited. You know, obviously, like this transportation is a big issue, right? Especially in cities, you have these like rickshaws. Islamabad, you have taxis. There needs to be a solid mass transit solution, especially for the masses, for the economic growth of this country. And what you're doing is amazing. So please, over to you.
So, I mean, look, I think what I've been doing has remained the same. I was at Kareem, we were trying to solve for mobility, Swivel was on the same mission, and Buscaro today continues to be on that mission, right? Pakistan is not a country where mass mobility will ever truly be provided by the government. And so I think it's important for the private sector to step in there and solve that problem, right? And I think previous players had come a long way. It's unfortunate that there's been exits from Pakistan, and that wasn't something that was seen through. Continuing on to do the same sort of work. I think especially this year with fuel prices going the way that they have, it's become now more important than ever. Most people are stepping down. We're also in a recession in terms of the kind of transportation that they can afford today, right? When we talk specifically, and you mentioned the term ride hailing, which generally applies to cars, that market share is less than 10% of what it used to be a couple of years ago, right? And so trying to still continue to provide that safety and security aspect that came through it, but do it in a more affordable way, which is what we do at Buscaro today. We're now across Karachi, Lahore, and Islamabad. You mentioned profitability, and in 2 out of the 3 cities that we operate in, we've already broken even on an EBITDA level in about 4 months, and so continue on that track.
Wow. No, it's amazing, and having a little bit of experience, I understand how difficult the unit economics are, right? Especially providing a quality mass transit solution, which you're right, the public needs and maybe the public sector can't provide.
May I disagree with you there? I don't think that the unit economics are difficult. I think that this sector has a bad reputation. But if we talk specifically about numbers, today I don't subsidize in my business. I, despite that, naturally am a fourth of the price of ride hailing or a third of the price of a rickshaw, right? Unit economics were bad because the market was sort of created in that way, right? When Swivel and Airlift started in Pakistan, they were burning a lot of money, they were overpaying supply, they were undercharging customers. When you actually pay what you should on a supply front and you charge what you should on a customer front, it's still a huge market that exists. And it is the most sustainable way for people to then commute.
Amazing. I think I would agree here. I think the same happened with a lot of quick grocery delivery services where you get like free grocery. Then you want to, like, even for a little thing you want to order, and then you want to order like 10 times a day, but you have to pay for it. Maybe you like order it together, right? So we give this option to customers to kind of abuse the system, and then because it's easier, so I would do it, right? But we need to create a better system. I would totally agree with you. So over to you, Asim, I would say. Please tell us more about what you do in Saudi. You are a Pakistani based in Saudi. That's an amazing success story. You run a big company there, and you have some presence here as well. So please enlighten us.
Thank you very much. So first of all, I would like to thank you, Arzish, and all the organizing team for arranging such an amazing event. And it's been amazing, like, so many delegates over here and good experience and, good words they are sharing. So we, in tracking.me, we are based in Saudi and we are into an IoT-based application for fleet management system mainly. And we are not only into the software side, we are also into the hardware side. So we are the only company in Saudi Arabia who is a made in Saudi product. And we have manufactured these products in Saudi. We are the only company in Saudi Arabia. And talking about the ride hailing and especially the logistics industry, in our sector, when we go and provide the transport owners and the other consumers on this industry, the data points, so it becomes so important for them that at times they are unable to analyze what's going on with their business, what sort of vehicle is giving a better performance and what sort of a driver is giving a better performance or stuff. So these things, when we see into our analytics and when we do some AI on those, we see that it's like, it's so much of data points which is coming in which when we really calculate into the business cases and the business use cases for the business owners, they really get the benefit out of it and they can make their business more efficient and more profitable. And that's where, when we talk about the car hailing as well, so if we just step 4 or 5 years back, had anyone would have imagined that, in a day, 40 million orders are being received on 2 applications of the car hailing. So that's like huge. So just imagine if we're talking about this number of trips which are being done on a daily basis from these 2 applications, the amount of data which we get, that what sort of a person, when he drives, when he goes, where he goes, all those analytics when we do that. So I think with the pace the technology is moving, it's going to empower the ride sharing more, very soon on this. So I think it's something which is going in the right direction, and especially companies like IoT based, when they are giving the data analytics points on these, it really turns around the full ecosystem of that.
Thank you so much. I think I've always liked this thing I read online: in God we trust, everyone else bring data. So what are you doing in Pakistan? What's your company? What's the Pakistani footprint?
So over here, what we have done is that our all back office tech is in Pakistan. That's one good thing. So all of our software developers are based in Pakistan. That's one part. Secondly, we have successfully imported our first shipment of made in Saudi in Pakistan. So we have also appointed one of the mega importers and distributors over here to distribute the same devices over here with our application to the logistic companies, and we'll be signing one of the MOUs in this event as well for this.
Fantastic to host this announcement. Over to you, Musstanser, my very old friend. So this feels like a very global discussion, right? So we have Maha running this in Pakistan, and then you're from Saudi, and your company is technically, you're in Norway, right? And then we have Russia and like 17 other places. Okay, yes. So Musstanser.
Okay, first of all, thank you very much, Arzish, for putting together this amazing conference and great panels. Going back to the topic of discussion that you mentioned, ride sharing or ride hailing, I think the first thing where you want to start is, what is it that we are trying to solve here? So you see, what you're trying to solve is to get from point A to point B. Now that's why a combination of different sorts of mobility comes into mind. That could be buses, shared taxis, Kareems, Ubers, or ride sharing in the same car. Or now you go to another level and you say, well, let's just share a private car which already exists out there. So to share what we do, so 2 of the businesses that I run are startups. So we have Hayk in Norway. We do actual ride sharing, vehicle sharing, electric car sharing. And then I have another technology company. We develop technology for mobility companies in particular, our focus on climate change. Now to understand why ride sharing is part of the future is with a question. How many people in this room have ever been stuck in a traffic jam? Please raise your hands. That's why we need
every day in
ride-sharing,
Lahore. It's like,
right? So this is the biggest problem. I did a quick Google search in Lahore. So 11 million people in Lahore drive 6.5 million vehicles. This is crazy. In retrospect, if you look at countries like Norway, for example, and all of these are, petroleum or diesel or whatnot, every 2 cars sold in Norway, out of 3 are electric. And we do not see electric vehicles in Pakistan yet. So this is a massive, massive problem. One of the reasons why we must shift to electric car sharing is you can reduce, so every time a vehicle is shared, it reduces up to 15 cars. And you can do the math. So if every car in the city was shared, you would be left with, it's a perfect scenario with like 400, 500,000 cars. So that's why it's very, very important.
yeah, and I think living in Lahore for the past many years, but currently for the 2 months for sure, there is so much traffic. It's like in Gulbarg, you can't even find parking, right? So what are all these cars doing just parked there? Why can't we just build a system that enables, us to even share resources, right? We are not a resource-rich country. All of these cars are imported, right? We talk about like the foreign deficit and all of that, and then all the cars we drive, including myself, I'll be a hypocrite, are imported, right? So this is a problem that we should solve as a national cause. And now over to Adeniyi. Thank you for coming back again so soon. What's up? What's happening? What is so different with Yango that you've beaten so many players in so many markets and expanded very, very fast, especially in like Africa and Middle East and now Asia as well?
Okay, thank you very much, Arzish. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Adeniyi, just like Arzish mentioned. I lead business development at Yango, and I would assume that most people have never heard that brand before. Anybody here know about Yango or have heard anything like that? Yango? Okay, I see a few hands over there. You do, yeah. And Yango is part of a bigger business group called Yandex, which started in 1997, a year before Google, as a search engine. And today, actually, we are the 3rd largest search engine in the world. And we expanded from search of just information to search of cars and search of efficiency in trying to make sure that you can get the best possible ETAs for transportation. Now, the important thing to note is that all our cities are built around mobility, full stop. Right, so you've got roads. You're not going to buy a plot of land or a residential plot if there are no roads. I mean, you know for sure that the price of that particular residential plot goes up immediately you've got roads around it. Right, so our cities and our lives are built around being able to move around conveniently. So that's number one. Number 2 thesis is that as we move around, we want to move around comfortably as well. And that's the reason why for a lot of people, the dream is to have a car. Or if you think about the US, for example, maybe you have 3 cars. You got your 1 car for the family, you got your own personal sports car, you got some other car for something else. And even as we transition to electric vehicles, just like my co-panelist here said, for a lot of people, the goal is still to be able to own a car, not necessarily to be able to share it. I mean, I want to get an electric car, but I want my electric car, right? So we have to sort of understand that, there is fundamental reasons why, for sure, our cities are built around mobility. We like to move around. And actually moving around is the essential ingredient for innovation and for everything that happens, right? So when you have people that can move and come to a place like this and discuss ideas, it's because I can sort of get on a plane and come here, right? So mobility is an important thing. It's actually maybe as important as the internet. And our role and what we think about a lot is how do we take care of 3 things that are on people's mind when we talk about mobility. One is obviously that it is affordable. I don't want to spend, 30% of my income on moving around. And this is what today happens for a lot of people in developing countries, right? So take Nigeria or Cote d'Ivoire in Africa, for example. people spend up to 40% of their income on transportation. And I'm very sure if we do a very rough estimate around this room, you would see that you spend a considerable amount of your income on just moving around. Right? So the first thing we try to solve for is affordability. How do you make it affordable for people to move around from point A to point B? So the essential part of building technologies for mobility is there a way for me to optimize and reduce dead miles that happens on the road when a driver is not without a passenger? Right. We've been able to do this in some countries where basically 97% of the time that our drivers are on the road, they're either going to pick up a client or with a client. So only 3% of dead miles. Right, so that's the number one thing that we try to solve for, affordability. Then the number two thing that is on people's mind is that it should be safe. Right? I ask myself, okay, if I am a young girl in Lahore, can I just hop on a bike? Maybe not very easily. Maybe not even very safe. Right? So the question is, what can we do to be able to make sure that you don't feel that you need to be scared of getting into a car or into a ride with someone else, some sort of random stranger. And how do you do this? You need to do verification, you need to be able to track, you need to be able to understand where these cars are, and you need to be able to provide at least some method for people to be able to trust the system that this is safe. So that's number two. So affordability, number one, safety, number two. And the third one, which I think it's something that a lot of people actually ignore, is the fact that in all of this, you need to be able to actually provide economic value for all the other stakeholders providing this value, meaning your drivers or your captains, as you call them here, and the transport owners. Now, how do we do that? Is also providing a lot of transparency and avoid conversations that is basically based on, do I trust you or not? Okay, if I give my car to a driver goes around, comes back, says, sorry boss, today was a very bad day. I was only able to have 5 hours of work. Is there a way for me to verify that he actually did 5 hours of work? Yeah. And not 10 hours of work and actually just pocketing the remaining 5 hours, right, into his pocket. So we try to solve for these three big themes, and that's basically the basis of how we build our business, right? Thinking about the technologies to improve affordability and safety, and thinking about technologies to be able to improve profitability for the stakeholders in the system. And across the world, we're currently operating in 25 countries across the world, 10 countries in Africa, 1 country in the Middle East, hopefully at some point in the future in Pakistan as well, 1 country in Latin America, and a few other countries in Europe. And across all of these markets, we've created opportunities for hundreds of thousands of drivers. On the platform, we have more than 2 million drivers every day that are on the road using our platform to work. And we believe that mobility is not going anywhere because we're mobile beings, our cities are built for mobility. All we need to sort of think about are the challenges around mobility and try to fix them on affordability, on safety, and creating an opportunity for people to be able to make money. So, and that's another reason why I'm super proud of some of the things I have seen here since I've been in Pakistan. This is my second time. And I think there are like models here that allow you to be able to do all those three things that I just mentioned. So again, once again, thank you very much for the invitation, Arzish, and thank you all for coming to join us on this panel.
Thank you so much. Thank you for giving an overview of like how your model works. You raised the issue of how we spend like 40% of our income on transport. I think back to the Airlift week, I would say I interviewed a lot of retail workers, right? And the results were like very depressing, right? So someone who earns maybe like 30,000 PKR spends 18,000 on transport and spends like 2 to 4 hours per day and has to change like multiple rickshaws. This is in Lahore, like Packages Mall, Nishat Mall. I interviewed like 100 such people as the first person, and there is definitely a problem. I think not just in Pakistan but globally, mobility needs to be fixed, and that is the question that we have in this panel. And we have this big Saudi participation. I keep hearing about the NEOM line city and how it's built around the concept that you all live on this one line, right? So mobility is like so important that the way our cities are designed, they need to be designed around mobility first. So it's not like, structures and it's like how do we move in the city? How can we reduce the time, the friction? And yes, in a lot of developing economies, the infrastructure is not up to date. But then this will be my last question to all of you, and I want your thoughts on what you think. I think let's go beyond ride sharing. What do you think is the future of mobility? With everything that's happening around the world, there's like flying taxis in Dubai, or like the Neom city, or the metro orange line in Lahore. There's a lot of these things, right? What do you think like the future of mobility looks like, and what should people expect? So we can start from Maha.
Yeah, okay. I can go ahead and we can take it from here.
Yeah.
What do I think is the future of mobility? I think, to be very honest, I would say that anyone who says they can predict the future is definitely lying. So I would not be able to tell you what the future of mobility is. What I can say is what is currently happening in terms of trends. When ride-hailing started, everybody talked about revolutionizing the taxi industry. And we've been at this for what? I mean, we at Yango have been at it for about 12 years. I think Uber has been at it about 14 years or 13 years, somewhere thereabout. And today, Uber is onboarding taxi drivers in New York, onboarding taxi drivers in Germany. It's gone full cycle back to taxis, right? And I think what this sort of tells us, and again, in that entire journey, the unit economics has still not been fixed, literally. You've gone 15 years to come back to taxes with an unprofitable business model, right? So I think what the trend tells us is that, I mean, the problem is not new. The problem of mobility is not new. What is important is not to think about some sort of revolution, but to think about some form of evolution. These taxi drivers are still in the system, the cars are still in the system, and you need to sort of think of how do we evolve from here to where we want to get to. So, and I think what we're saying is that more people are trying to sort of think around that, right? Where basically we're bringing back the bus system that has existed for more than 100 years, the taxi system that has existed for 150 years. I was in Germany last year, and I found a taxi company in Hamburg that has been in existence for 120 years, a taxi company.
Wow.
With a radio. Right? So I guess the trend is basically that, people are realizing that you need to focus on the core problem and to sort of evolve the solutions from adapting the context to the solution that you're building. So you're not going to go to Silicon Valley that, Uber solved a specific problem for and apply the same solution to Pakistan that is facing a completely different problem. Right. So I guess that is what I would say the trend is looking at, adapting to the current realities. And we tend to be able to do that very well. So,
thank you so much for your thoughts.
I would say future of mobility is very exciting. The way I like to put it is, when Ford first created a vehicle, he said, if I asked people what they wanted, they would have said faster horses. So whenever we are in this discussion and debate on what is mobility of the future, I always come back to this point. What would Ford say today? How would you reach from point A to B? And the way the whole COVID thing happened, digitization has happened. So the need for commuting far is also less. So there's also a lot of prop tech solutions which are out there. But this problem has not been solved. There are a lot of examples. For example, we can learn from what has happened in Amsterdam. You see a lot of scooters out there, e-scooters, bicycles. Now there's a traffic jam of those scooters, etc. It's garbage. It has created a lot of negative carbon emissions as well. So it's a big problem. But one good thing for emerging country like Pakistan is it hasn't happened here. So we can learn what should be the regulation right now to create the right future. We can learn to be sure that understanding what impacts certain behavior of driving the same vehicle has on the total climate impact. So there are a lot of lessons we can take from Norway, Amsterdam, in US. So once we are thinking about this, creating this future for mobility, particularly in, let's say, Pakistan, we need to take into account all these things. Traditionally, interestingly, we used to have these Sorab cycles in Pakistan, and they were big. My father talks about it, that he had one. But then it died, and we all shifted to these cars, etc. So I think it has to start from yourself, reflecting on how do you start this behavioral change, yourself, your company, your city. Like in Norway, we are now partnering with several cities, and they share their vehicles among one another. So that's where I think. But flying cars is definitely coming. Now people are going to the moon and Mars.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's going to be exciting.
Thank you so much. Definitely excited.
Yes, so the future of mobility, in my view, I think we are talking about smart cities, we are talking about electric cars, we are talking about, how to make it more convenient, we are talking about data, and so I think that we are heading towards that without saying, and we are seeing some examples which are getting implemented, especially when we talk about Saudi, the NEOM city, how they are planning to build in. So I think it's very evident that we are already going in that direction. And based on the previous experiences into the logistics and the e-commerce industry, we are seeing that what we thought of, it has exponentially grown. And we are talking again the same things which we will see that it will start happening and people adopting very soon. And it will bring more convenience and I think more like efficiency to the ecosystem in this particular industry. So it's for sure it's coming. It will be more empowered in the future.
Thank you so much.
I'll speak about this a little bit more from a Pakistan context. So while, I think it's important to acknowledge that we're currently living in the past. And so while we're talking about EVs, which I spend most of my day sorting from a unit economics standpoint and flying cars, we're sitting in a country where we don't even have the basics in order. So you talked about taxis, you talked about buses, even those basic forms of transportation are broken in our country, right? And anytime you try to do a better version of that, since the government won't do it and people like you and I will do it, we have to look at unit economics. And none of these other things, unfortunately, today make sense, right? So unless there's private-public partnerships that allow for a more sustainable future of mobility, as it stands today, I think we're far behind. And I think the three core things that you mentioned, which is, safety and affordability, and then profitability. And to add one to that, I think also having a way for there to be accessibility, which isn't there in our transportation. I think finding a combination that ensures those four things is eventually going to decide what the future looks like here, right? At least short to medium term for Pakistan. So sorry to be a little bit more negative than everybody else, but I think we need to learn how to crawl before we're talking about running.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I would agree with you that, there is definitely a lot of room for improvement in many things. The theme for our event is that we feel that we are living in the future, we just don't see it. There's so much difference in the kind of access to information and resources in the world right now, and our goal is to democratize it, right? And the internet is doing it in one way, right? You have internet, you can do anything that anyone can do in any country, right? But physical resources, it takes time, it takes investment, and for our resource, I would say a lot of other economic challenges. Yes, we need to solve this. Yeah, Musstanser, you have a comment.
So a very, very, very small point. I think there are tangible examples that we can take from countries like Norway on how did they increase EV adoption. It's a straightforward case, and Pakistan can do the same.
Yeah.
A simple regulation such as, there are incentives. You need to incentivize people. One, well, if you're driving an electric vehicle, you go in the fast lane.
Absolutely.
So you are not stuck in a traffic jam. Two, you pay lesser taxes. Three, government gives some sort of money back. So there are a lot of very easy ways to increase electric adoption. All we have to do is take a look at what the West did wrong and right and learn from it. I think that's the only way we can move forward.
Then let's take...
I completely agree with that, and I'll give you I'll give you an example. So we've got operations in Angola, and when I tell people this, people are always shocked that on our fleet, we've got thousands of vehicles running in Angola in about 70% of them are EVs in Angola. I mean, it's kind of shocking, like, what is happening there? And I think there are a couple of things that are important. Some of those things you've mentioned are incentives and so on and so forth. But beyond that, you need to be able to have, one, infrastructure to be able to actually, survive on EVs, right? Because even if you go on a fast lane and your car breaks down in the middle of the road, you are going to be the reason for the traffic as that EV, right? So having, for example, in Luanda, a city of 8 million people, there are like 10 charging stations. And it is like every 40 minutes, a car is breaking down on the road because it just could not get to the next charging station. And that's it, right? So there's a lot of thought that needs to go into, I think, what Maha mentions as public-private partnership for you to be able to actually kickstart this kind of conversations around EVs, right? So there is the incentives part, which is important. But beyond that, at the end of the day, people have to be able to have skin in the game and say, I'm putting an infrastructure in place that you will, even today we've seen it here, right? So, you're having an event and then the electricity cuts off and you got to pause a little bit and start all over again, right? And it's the same story when it comes to EVs. It's not, it's not as easy as it sounds, but I think it's completely doable. And for countries where, for example, you've got very, very high prices for gas, I think it's an important thing to do. In terms of how we get there, it's a completely different conversation, and I think maybe we don't have a panelist here who can give us the perspective on the other side.
So I'm quickly going to say something there, right? So until about a year ago, pre the last fuel price increase, cost structures for any vehicle you do with Yango were about 60% higher. A customer's propensity to pay was 0% higher. Unless you take that hit as a company, not going to happen. Two, when you go out to find the investor for that electric vehicle, you won't find him because the infrastructure, especially in Karachi, is so poor, right? Lahore, Islamabad, you might. And so again, this is why I keep going back to my public-private partnership bit. Unless there's support on that front, from both an infrastructure standpoint and from the financial bit of it. These aren't real initiatives that I want to be honest and say we can actually take in Pakistan.
Absolutely. So I'll just wrap this up, but before this, I'm aware that there are electric buses now being installed in the public sector in Karachi and in Lahore as well. I think they're freshly imported from Germany. A lot of people know about this, a lot more will hear about this. But before just wrapping up, I want to thank you all for flying all the way from, I don't know where you flew from, like Moscow this time? I don't know. Okay, somewhere very far. Yeah, and then Musstanser, you were in Islamabad, but you're coming from from Saudi, and Maha from Karachi. Thank you so much for putting in all the effort. It has been a pleasure hosting you.
Thank you for having us.